Thank you, everybody, and thank you for being here early on a Saturday morning. We are so glad that you could join us on this, our second program on language and the brain. It's a topic that I always wanted to include at Planet Word because when thinking about what a word museum could be about, I kept coming across so many exciting articles on advances in the field of neuroscience. Discoveries that affected speech and communications, like voice banking for those losing their ability to speak, writing as therapy for PTSD sufferers, or new insights into dyslexia and aphasia. This morning, we're focusing specifically on how music affects communication and language ability. In particular, how music and song can help children develop pre-reading skills, how singing can help people regain their ability to speak after traumatic brain injury, how singing can defy the aging brain, and how music can be a partner in storytelling. Several of our speakers were recommended by our first speaker and my friend, Renee Fleming, someone who hardly needs any introduction. As we all know, Renee is internationally acclaimed for her vocal and dramatic artistry on the opera stage, on Broadway, and even on Sesame Street. A 5-time Grammy winner, a Kennedy Center honoree, the recipient of the National Medal of Arts, and a WHO Goodwill Ambassador for Arts and Health, she has sung for momentous occasions from the Nobel Prize ceremony to the Super Bowl, to, I might add, Planet Word's virtual grand opening 5 years ago. So thank you for making that event so memorable, Renee. In the last few years, she's become an advocate for the powerful impacts of the creative arts on health. Her wonderful anthology, Music and Mind, Harnessing the Arts for Health and Wellness, was published in 2024. She's been at the forefront of this new field of neuro arts, which is one of the inspirations for this morning's symposium. And I also want to thank Ann Ziff, Renee's friend and my friend, for her sponsorship of this series. So please get ready for a fascinating morning and help me welcome Renee Fleming to our slightly more humble but grateful stage.
Thank you. It's great to see you all. And this is a beautiful stage, beautiful sound. What a wonderful thing to have in addition to this brilliant museum. I'm really grateful to be here. So I want to speak about our moral imperative to increase positive social connection, the role the arts can play, and the benefits for our health. But first, I know we're not all warmed up, but I think we need to sing together. So I'm going to split you into 3. So left, center, and right, you can self-select. Here we go. We're going to start with the left. La, center. La, right. La, crescendo, louder, louder, louder. Listen to each other. Louder. See, you knew that. Yeah. I have to bring, that's also, besides being a famous film score, it's Richard Strauss. So he's my desert island composer. When we sing together, our brain waves align, we increase oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and lessen cortisol, the stress hormone, and our heart rate sync. We also stimulate the vagus nerve. That's a lot of good things for us. And we know this because of a growing body of scientific evidence backed by technology. So neuroarts is a new field that combines all aesthetic experiences, allowing us to flourish, beginning with simply being in nature. That's one of my favorites. So why might this next video be relevant? Yep, headbang is my favorite. So parrots, like us, have developed beat perception and synchronization. Scientists believe this is due to their ability to listen to and imitate the sounds of others. He made all of that up, Snowball. Evolution is truly the key to understanding why engaging with art is still so powerful. Archaeological artifacts dating back more than 200,000 years prove this. And music likely predated speech. So our vocal apparatus, the larynx, was exactly the same in Neanderthals. And I really would love to hear that opera. So tribal by nature, we chanted, danced, and drummed our way to social cohesion and survival. So the pillars of current research are childhood development, chronic pain, mental health, aging, and basic science. So let's begin at birth. Lullabies are found in truly every culture. And this surprises me. For postpartum depression, singing in a choir significantly reduces symptoms. So how many of you sang in a choir or played an instrument growing up? How about visual art, dance? Wow, this is great. How many of you still do? Very healthy, good. So children who study a musical instrument develop better language and reading faster, with better memory, focus, and lasting changes in the brain. After only 2 years, you will hear all about this from Dr. Habibi, who is brilliant. So in a hospital setting, teens with cancer are much better able to express the difficult emotion they're feeling through writing lyrics than with talk therapy. So here are examples of a couple of music therapists at work. First in early childhood, and then meet Evie, born without eyes, about to undergo seizure testing, and terrified.
There was a farmer who had a dog, and Bingo was his name. Oh, I-N-G-O, I-N-G-O.
Can we have more volume, please?
Beep, 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 beep.
Good job all through the town.
Down.
Yeah.
I am not one way ma. Dot. I am not one way ma. Dot. I am dead way ma. Tan Yang Yang Fabian. I am not one way ma.
Are you ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Can you sing Scars to Your Beautiful now?
But she just wants to be beautiful. She goes. I know as you know. Her limit she craves. Hope is way to fall away. A dark. Beautiful just the way you are. And you don't have to change a thing.
Every children's hospital should have a creative arts therapy studio. So compared with other medical interventions, these therapies are low cost, non-pharmaceutical, and non-invasive. And they give a 3-to-1 return on investment for dementia care alone. And music memory truly is the last to go. I saw this with my husband's aunt, who didn't know anyone around her, didn't even really open her eyes in her last years. But if you started a song, she could sing tons of songs from her youth with perfect lyrics. It was really uplifting and connected her to us. Some of the strongest results for those with neurologic disorders come from using music and rhythm to treat Parkinson's and the effects of stroke. Meet the Unforgettables, a dementia choir, and Cindy with Parkinson's, who can't really walk but can dance.
The whole project had to do with a person with dementia and their caregiver joining in together actively, singing every week, rehearsing, and every 12 weeks having a concert where we would present to families and friends and the community.
I must say, I really cried because I watched Donald enjoy something so profoundly, and just looking at him enjoy that was absolutely the most valuable thing to me.
When I'm slumping, I say to myself, I'm a dancer. I have to sit up straight. I'm a dancer. And it gives me motivation to take better care of myself. My feet feel like glue when they're stuck on the floor. I sometimes cannot walk, but I can dance. I could walk a little bit, but if I pretend I'm dancing, I could go. And I don't have any problems.
Brain plasticity. So pain is another important area of research. I have a friend who had a terrible brain hemorrhage, and the only thing that alleviated her agony was playing Jimi Hendrix as loud as she could. So the music is taste-based. It's whatever works for you. So with this worldwide epidemic we have of loneliness and isolation, creative arts can help uncover hidden pain. The brain is still the most complex object in the known universe, with endless plasticity to form new pathways. Now, my favorite example of this, and I shouldn't even be showing this because Tom is here with us, melodic intonation uses singing to regain speech. So it also works with autism spectrum, stroke, or traumatic brain injury. So you'll see this with two examples. The first is a stroke patient who regained speech after just one session with a music therapist because it's a different part of the brain. And then Forrest Allen, after a horrible traumatic brain injury snowboarding, and has recovered miraculously.
Can you ask me what? Can you try to say, how are you? Okay.
I want water. I want water. I want water. Good. That was nice and clear. And so, if you're thirsty, you could tell someone. I want water. Good. Really good.
His injury was catastrophic, and they told us they didn't expect him to wake up.
They were saying he may be so brain traumatized that he'll never speak again.
Your voice is still there. You just have to find it.
I was desperate to find some way to keep him connected, and that's when I called Tom.
The first sign that we saw that music was affecting Forrest was just a little tiny move of the finger, like he was keeping rhythm. He was definitely connecting to music. Yes. It was melodic intonation and making sounds and hugging him and getting him to grunt.
This was one where he had been subjected to a large amount of standard therapies, and music therapy is what changed the game.
And up in your nose. That's my darling.
It's incredible.
Hi Renee, this is Forrest. I really appreciate you supporting our movie, Music Got Me Here. It means the world to me that someone of your talent will support us, and Tolliver would like to thank you as well. Tolliver, take a bow.
So as an artist and advocate, it's been amazing to see these developments. There's a real grassroots movement across the country. NeuroArts is actually creating community coalitions, networking across communities. It's absolutely brilliant. They also have a new resource center. I highly recommend that you check in with that. The National Institutes of Health was funding a lot of this kind of research. In fact, my friends here benefited from that tremendously and really were able to make great discoveries. The funding cuts, which is 40%, have cut out basically all of these initiatives, which is sad. But we try, we continue, and I'm trying really hard with my foundation, working with the Blueprint to fund young scientists who create amazingly creative ideas with artists. We just published the latest round of awards, and they're truly inspiring. I can't tell you how much. It gives me a lot of hope. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Let me know if you want to help. And I wanted to share this with the public, so I produced this anthology, Music in Mind. I truly believe that performing arts venues, this is a perfect example. This is a museum. You're doing it, creating community, letting us come together I'm all in on the pastries myself and promoting well-being and social connection. And I'm hoping to soon turn on the TV and hear, ask your doctor if creative arts therapies are right for you. Side effects, I know, include better mood, cognition, and the occasional earworm. So I will leave you with some incredibly hopeful and joyful an example of evolution at work. Thank you.
Place to Be, Tom Schweitzer.
Hi. Thank you, Renee. Thank you for everything. We are so blessed to have you as an advocate and ambassador for what we do in our lives as music therapists. My name is Tom Schweitzer. Very happy to be here today at Planet Word. Just a little bit about A Place to Be. I'll show you this video. Oh, I have to click something. The down button.
Thank you. A Place to Be is a nonprofit organization where we help people face and navigate and overcome life's challenges through music therapy.
A Place to Be kind of made me realize that, music isn't just a hobby. It's not just something that, you can listen to. It has these healing powers that are like superheroes.
We use music therapy to help a person transform into the person that they dream to be.
But I think transformation happens internally too, on an emotional level, when you change somebody's perspective about who they are or how the world sees them, and then transformation's endless.
And up. Yes, good.
It opens up possibilities to become your full self, not just a label, not just a piece of who you are, but the entire being that you were meant to be.
What if we said, let's bring our heartbeats out into the world, bring our passion out into the world, and through our hearts and through the music, allow ourselves to be more human than we ever have been.
I just love to see him, the proud look on his face when he knows that he's accomplished something so wonderful.
That's awesome. Good job.
And on the road to getting his voice back.
Every day I felt the pain. Coming to A Place to Be, it makes you feel like you have a purpose. It makes you feel like you belong somewhere and you're meant to be who you are and be just with this amazing group of people changing lives.
So that is who we are. Thank you. We have 11 full-time music therapists, and we every day see miracles. I have the coolest job. I am humbled and blessed every day that I walk into our center. And we're very near you. Some of you have traveled from Loudoun County today. We're just outside of Washington, D.C. And so today I want to share a few techniques with you and experiences with you that have to do with words and music. But first, everybody, Renee already got us going, but I do want to ask you this. On a scale from 1 to 10, right now, take a big breath in, breathe it out. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1, you don't feel great at all. Your body's sore, you're not present in this moment, not great. 10, you feel exuberant and wonderful and full of life. So think of that number in your head right now. All right, now we're going to dance. Just like Renee scared you about singing. Wait for this one. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to stand up if you can. Oh, wait. Is there a, let's see. I think I'm doing something wrong. There's a link. Britt, am I doing something wrong? Just of the song. Oh, there we are. You all know this song. All right. We have a minute and a half of dancing. Here we go. Arms up. Can you all move at the same time? I should have told you I'm a Zumba instructor too. How about your shoulders? Roll them back. Front. Take your hands. Every anxiety you have inside this morning, especially if you listen to the news, take your fists. Make some fists. Punch it with the rhythm. Pretend you are Adele. All right, on your own. Whatever moves you have, this morning you are accepted in this room. Take a big breath in with me. Let me hear you sigh it out. Even louder. Bigger breath in and then out. Oh, shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. You can have a seat. Thank you. All right, so here's my question. That was 1 minute. Raise your hand if your number went up even by 1. Right. This movement is so important, and music can motivate. This is why we don't usually work out that often. I am a Zumba instructor. We don't work out that often. I love that you're fanning yourself because that means we really did work out. Music can be a motivator to get our bodies moving, to get the oxygen inside, and to feel alive. In fact, I'm going to be really honest with you. When I came up here just to say hello to you, you were not smiling. Now you're smiling. Which is, I'm thankful for that. So music can be sticky. So when we are working with individuals, be it on emotional or physical or whatever that we are working on for them to have a better life, music is this core stimuli that we can depend upon. And all through our lives, we have had music teach us what to do, what to sing. You know this song, I'm pretty sure. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Hopefully you can sing it. Q, R, S, T. You do sound good. So I always ask, after I work with somebody maybe who has traumatic brain injury. Yesterday, a gentleman that I am working with in DC had a stroke a year and a half ago, and I blew his mind when I asked him, wait a minute, this ABC song, what is this song? You all know it? Twinkle, twinkle, little. Good enough. So one of the reasons that this sticks, so we're not going to dive too far into it, but in music, you know, there are octaves, right? And between the octaves, there are only 12 notes. And with those 12 notes, trillions of songs have been created. And between the notes, there are intervals. For instance, this is called a perfect fifth. Right? Perfect fifths help us. They're really sticky, right? Then there are things like, let's pick a minor second. What movie is it? Thank you. It also, if you want to look into minor seconds, it creates a sort of eagerness. What famous movie did this? Right, Star Wars or Titanic. There's a lot of minor seconds in Star Wars too. And Titanic, right? So music has secrets behind it. And when we're trying to help somebody with their words, we use music as the platform for them. So there's a young man that I had. He is now 28. I started with him when he was 11. Ryan is his name. And when they brought him to me, they said he will only say one word, maybe two at the most. But he's pretty much nonverbal. The first session I had with him, he sat across from me, and I'm, hey, Ryan, good morning, how are you? 88. Good morning, Ryan, do you want to play some piano? 102. It took me a month to figure out that he was telling me my beats per minute of speaking, right? So finally, I did figure. Well, somebody else figured it out after I showed them it. It's like, what is this kid doing? Very slowly, we would take one word, yes, and then Mr. Tom, and connect them together to be full sentences. Then what we would do is record this kind of conversation for his parents to use at home. What would you like for breakfast, Ryan? I'd like eggs. And all of a sudden, they were starting to have conversation. Mom and Dad thought they couldn't sing. They actually weren't great singers. But it didn't matter because this is what they were doing to have conversation back and forth with their child. I am going to, Renee showed this. Thank you, Renee, for showing that with Forrest. I'm going to skip because I can do something else. I'm so bad at this part. There we go. So same young man that you heard. By the way, he is doing great. He's 31 years old now, and he works at a place called Dolphin Quest in Hawaii. And Renee doesn't know this, he has opened up his own project there for people with traumatic brain injury that will come in and work with the dolphins. So he is doing fantastic. So when I was working with Forrest, I was called into the National Rehab Hospital. And he was in a coma for about 6 months. And they asked me to come in. I was very nervous. And I went in there and I started to sing Let It Be with my guitar. It was the first time that we saw Forrest's pinky kept rhythm. Months went by. And we were told there's not going to be a voice. He's not going to be able to speak. There's no sound. One day, I was down at his house, and his caregiver was holding him because he was throwing up. And he started to throw up, which was, oh! And I thought, there's the sound. There it is. So through months and months of working together, I would sing, good morning. Months went by, and one morning, it came out. Good morning. We have it on, if you watch the movie, Music Got Me Here, you're going to see all of this. That day, his mother was on a job in Japan, and we had to call her. in the middle of the night to just let her hear her son's words. Another year went by, and when you have a tragic accident like this, he had it at 18 years old, so he lost a lot of his young adulthood, and he wanted to get this out of his heart to me one day in a session. So, words. We created a song. Every word you're about to hear these are his words, and he helped hum this tune. So one day we had this conversation about him being trapped inside. And when I work with an individual, I can't stop thinking about how horrific it must be to be trapped inside when you really you're trying to say something to somebody. About 2 weeks before we wrote this song, he had, at this point, an iPad and a Dynavox where he could write with his finger. And he said, "Please find my voice, Mr. Schweitzer." That's a lot of pressure, you know. Anyways, weeks later, this is what he wrote with me. So my question to him was, tell me about what it felt like in the hospital. Laying in silence for over 2 years, trying to talk through my painstaking fears. Open my mouth and nothing comes out, no matter how hard I tried. The words never came out. The words never came out. Faces in front of me of those I love, they look down at me from up above, speaking inside my head, stuck in a hospital bed. No matter how hard I tried, the words never came out. The words never came out. I am here alive, singing inside my head. Go on and try to stop me. There will be a day when I will sing to you and say thank you, thank you. But the words never came out. The words never came. So I just called him the other day to remind him of this song, and he didn't stop talking on the phone. He's like, "What? Tell Renee I said hi, and who's going to be there? Tell them about my dolphins." So I'm just going to give you one more example as we do something together to end my time with you. I had the opportunity to work at Inova Hospital for many years as a music therapist. And one day I was with a woman who had ovarian cancer, and she just came out of she just came out of surgery. She sat there, I sat there with my rolling keyboard. She was in a lot of pain. Music taste. What song would you like to hear today? She told me that music makes her cry a lot, so she wasn't sure she wanted me in the room. I understand. Music, there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line. I was trained as an actor years ago. We were always taught that there is the smallest fine line between laughter and tears. That's why sometimes when you laugh so hard, you cry. When you cry so hard, sometimes you just don't know what to do but laugh. So time went by, and then she looked out her window, didn't talk to me for about 10 minutes, but I'm holding space for her as a therapist. And she said, "Over the rainbow." So, words. This is what we call lyric analysis or lyric expression. So I'm going to sing what I sang, and I'm going to tell you exactly what she said to me. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. She's looking out the window. I don't want to be here. I look at the sky. A rainbow would be sure effing nice. There's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. My mom used to sing this song to myself and my sister. I want her here now. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. She used the F word again. I want to get the F out of here. Where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. I just want to get home with my kids. I wish for them to come visit me today because they missed yesterday. Tom, I want to start a hobby. She starts to cry. If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I go over to her, hold her hand, and she says, I deserve to fly. So now we're going to do this with you. So just the way everything is in the world, if you don't know what I'm talking about, talk to me after. I did a presentation, and I started out that way with a group of people, and they're like, what's going on? I don't know where they live. So we're going to do this the same thing with you all. You know this song too, so I'm going to sing it, and then just what I'm going to ask of you, when I take a break, first thought that, don't use the F word, but the first thought that comes to your head, something that you can imagine. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. First thoughts. Peace. Freedom. What's that? Light. Thank you. Above us only sky. Sing with me. Imagine all the people living for today. You. Go ahead. What else is coming to your brains? Say this again. We are one. Unification. What else is coming? Unity. We got this. See, these people know what's happening. Imagine, so just, music and the words of music can bring you right to what is happening. Imagine there's no country. Sing it with me, please. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion to tell me what you're thinking appropriately. What's that, Teresa? Tolerance. What a word. Acceptance. Relief. That used to be us. That is a great title for a song. We should write it. That used to be us. Yes. We just did. Try not to get political. And here we go. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us real big, and the world will be as one. So here's what we're going to do. Last thing. Take a big breath in again. Breathe it out. Raise your hand if your wellness number moved for the better at all, or the more present. You might be a little bit more depressed. But that you're present, right? You're feeling something. So here's what I'm going to ask, last thing out of all of you. And the world will live as one. We're all going to pretend to be Renee Fleming. This is how I get people to sing, especially a friend that she and I have in common. who she sings very lightly. I'm like, sing like Renee. So I need all of you. What you're going to do right now is in your own heart and your own head, you're going to think. So Renee knows this. I have a show out there that is about forgiveness. That is not about today. If you want to hear more about it, you can look me up. Oh, thank you for that. But it's about forgiveness. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to think of one person you can forgive right now by the end of this Saturday in your head. Think of that person, because we can start this ripple right now. And you're going to sing this with me. And the world will live as one. One person. Thank you all. Sorry. I forgot about the questions.
One question. Do you want me to pick?
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned on the Dynavox, and I wondered if you would comment on your use or not use of assistive and augmentative communication devices.
Sure. For Forrest, it was pretty good. It depends where the client or patient's eyesight is, and also the use of their hands at times, or if you're using the voice. It depends on patient to patient. For him, because he had tracking, it worked very well. But I have worked with also other clients and patients that it's difficult. But it does give an outlet to words and phrases, especially when you can make custom-made phrases for that individual in there. And happy to talk to you more about that. Yeah. So it's a communication system. It's a computer, really, where you might see smaller versions of it in an iPad or around somebody's neck at a school. It's the ability to talk into that computer, or you can visualize letters and pick them out, so you can make words and phrases. And for the first few months, Forrest used his eyes to track the letters to make words. It's a pretty remarkable device. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Please welcome Associate Research Professor of Psychology at the Brain and Creativity Institute at the University of Southern California, Dr. Asal Habibi.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Tom, for such a great presentation and for everything you do. Every time I watch your slides, I cry. So, and thank you, Renee, for all the advocacy and support work. This field really cannot go on without your support. So I'm personally very grateful for all you do. So my presentation will not be as fun as Tom's, but I'm going to share some of our science work on the relationship between music training and child development. So just to bring us all on the same page, I'm going to share a short video of a group of children. This has been about a year into their music training. These children are part of a longitudinal study that I'm going to tell you about. But I want you to just pay attention to what it takes for a child to play music within an ensemble, to pay attention to others, to the conductor. So let's take a look at that.
Sit well. Let's sit. Proud, huh? And one, Wonderful. Wonderful. Great job.
So these are children of the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, being directed by still the LA Philharmonic music director, Gustavo Dudamel. And this is the program that we've been studying. So if you paid attention, for these children to learn how to play music, they have to translate these abstract symbols on the music sheet to meaningful finger movement on their instrument, or in the case of their singing, their vocal cords. They have to adjust these movements based on the feedback they're getting. They have to listen to the beat, memorize the pieces of music, and when they're playing with others, they also have to pay attention to the people around them, synchronize with them, emotionally communicate with them, and also follow the conductor. And there is a growing body of evidence showing learning how to do all of these together impacts not only your musical skills, but also the cognitive function, language development, and social emotional development. One question we had is this genetic predisposition? Maybe you're just good at these things. Maybe you have better rhythm perception, you have better memory, or mathematical skills, and all of these together lead you to become a musician. Or is it the impact of music itself? Is it the music training that helps develop these skills and enhance them? Most likely, like any other skill, is the interaction and the combination of the two. So to answer that question, in 2012, we started a longitudinal study with the Los Angeles Philharmonic and their youth orchestra program. This was a planned 5-year study to look at child development as they learn music. Just to give context, YOLA is a free music program that is offered by the LA Phil mostly to underserved population in Los Angeles. These are children who cannot afford going to private music lessons, and their public education system does not have music. They go to the program 5 days a week, about 2 hours a day. So it's pretty intense, very high quality, and everything is done. This is an El Sistema-based music program, so everything is done in a group. So a lot of group interaction is encouraged. And with my experience, they really call this place a community and a home. This program has been very successful. They started with 100 students. Right now, YOLA has about 2,500 students in LA, and I think part of it is because it really creates a home and a community for these children. So we recruited 25 of them after they have enrolled in YOLA, but before they had any music training. Because we were going to follow them over time, we also needed control groups because every child gets better with their language, math skills, memory over time across the 5 years. So we had an active control group of children who played sports. These are very similar program, community-based soccer program. And this was also to account for the group interaction part of it. So maybe what we would see was not just music itself, maybe any group training would have the benefits. So we had sports, and then we also had a group of children who at the time of this study were not part of any systematic music or sports program. This was not to say that for the next 5 years in their life, we told them you can't touch a keyboard or play soccer. We just systematically followed it up with their parents pretty frequently, about 3 months, every 3 months. And if they participated in a high-intensity program, we did not include them in our study. So from there, they came to our laboratory at the Brain and Creativity Institute once a year with their parent. They spent about a whole day there. And we do a pretty comprehensive battery of cognitive, social, emotional measures, look at their attention, memory, language development. We also do MRI scanning to look at their brain structure and function and how these structures are connected together, and look at electrophysiology. So to really answer the impact of music training on cognitive and social emotional development and the underlying brain networks. Because they were all starting at age 6, we ran all of these batteries at the baseline and showed that at the baseline there were no group differences between them. Just to because this was not a randomized control trial, but just to see that they have an equal baseline at the start. This is just to show you how much data we have from this study. We ended up actually doing this study for 7 years, even though it was planned for 5. We have imaging, we have EEG, and a pretty comprehensive battery of measures of cognition, social emotional well-being, interview with their parents. And then we started with about 70 students, and up to year 5, we kept a lot of them. Our retention rate was pretty high for a longitudinal study with underserved population. This is a population that is pretty transient. But again, I think part of it was that they, especially the kids in the music group, they were so connected to the music program that they stayed with it. Between year 5 and 7, it's the COVID year, so we lost some of them to that follow-up. Okay, so we have a lot of results. I'm not going to go over every result of this study, but I wanted to just give you some highlights of what we found. So first thing, what we call in science sanity check. They're learning music, are their musical skills getting better? So these are like pitch perception, rhythm perception, and also musical performances, like are their singing abilities better, can they synchronize better? The music group is depicted in blue line, and you can see over time, they're just outperforming the other two groups in all of these musical skills and musical abilities. So it's good. That is the part that we wanted to make sure it's working. So going one step further past musical abilities, what about auditory memory or general kind of like abilities that rely on sound and auditory perception? So working memory in the auditory domain is that when you have to memorize a list, you're going to grocery store and you have something in your mind, you remember that. In order to test that, we would give them two kind of like pairs of melodies, and sometimes the two pairs were identical, and sometimes the second part of the pair had a deviant note. This could be a pitch deviation, a rhythm deviation, and they had to say whether the two were the same or different. In order for you to be able to do this task successfully, you have to be able to remember the first pattern so you can compare the second one to the first one. So what we saw is that over time, children in the music group successfully do this significantly better than the control groups. It's not the matter that the control groups could not hear. When the two melodies were the same, everybody did well. So their hearing is okay. It's just the music kids were better at detecting these deviations, allocating their attention to their auditory environment to detect changes. So behaviorally they were better, but what about their brain? These are electrophysiology plots. You're looking at the brain from the top, and this is year 3, 4, 5 post-training for the music compared to the control group. And what I want to show you is this kind of like this red blob. This is called the P300. It's the signature of the attention network of your brain. If somebody just walks in here and yells, all of you will have a P300 in your brain because something is off in the environment, you're paying attention. This is the attention system saying, I'm present, I'm paying attention. So not only they are behaviorally doing this task better, but we see this brain signature present from their attention system, whereas in the control group, we don't see that. So their behavior is changing, the underlying neural mechanism of it is also changing. So looking at kind of these auditory areas of the brain that are important, even though they're being stimulated by music as they're learning music, the auditory system is not only used for music, it's used for communication, speech, language development. So I'm showing you the brain, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. This is the primary auditory cortex in red, and these are secondary auditory areas. This is what facilitates our auditory communication and learning in the world. And what we saw with these children, specifically in the music group, was neuroplastic changes in these regions. In this superior temporal gyrus, we saw less thinning of the cortex over time in the music group compared to the other groups, meaning that they're preserving cortical matter as part of their musical training, specifically in the right hemisphere. What about connectivity? So the brain communicates with these white matter highways that really integrates information, allows for the parts of the brain to talk with each other and to communicate. You're looking at the brain here from the top, and there's a big fiber bundle that connects the left and the right hemisphere. It's called the corpus callosum. It basically allows for the integration of information between the two hemispheres of the brain. We expected to see more connectivity in these children in the motor and sensory areas of their brain, the parts that connects the motor and sensory, because if you think about it, when you learn music, you learn a lot of coordination, the left and the right hand, the auditory motor coordination. So not only we saw that, these precentral and postcentral areas connecting more robustly, but more importantly, we saw more connectivity in the music group in the frontal parts of the brain. These are the areas that facilitate decision-making, attention, memory, executive function. So we saw more robust, even though at the baseline these things were equal between the groups, as a result of music training, we saw more robust connectivity. How about their parents? We asked about their mental health over time. Granted, these are parents who were committed to come to this program 3 to 5 times a week, but over time, the parents in the music group saw their children less aggressive and less hyperactive. The sports kids had the same commitments, but we did not see that pattern in the sports kids. And when I look at this plot, Really, the sad part for me is the children in the control group, the ones who had no enrichment programs. Even from the perspective of their own family, they're doing worse in these mental health kind of indices of aggression and hyperactivity. Okay, so kind of looking at these social emotional development, one of the things we really emphasize is a skill called delayed gratification or inhibition. You are going to go to the intermission and there are going to be cookies and you're going to make a decision of whether you're going to have a cookie right away or you're going to delay that gratification to maybe having a healthier lifestyle to be able to have a better meal later. It's a really important skill. And maybe some of you have seen the marshmallow videos with young children. It's a skill that's a very strong predictor of both social achievement, academic achievement, and life success in general. So it's a really good thing to develop inhibition or impulse control. These children were a little bit older for marshmallow, but M&Ms are also a really good stimulus. Anything with sugar really will do. So what we do is that we actually change the size of the future reward. So you have one now versus 2 later, or a scenario could be 1 now versus 4 later, which is kind of a medium reward, or 1 now versus 6 later. And you just allow them to make decisions, and they know that we'll see them later, and they can make a decision. I'm going to show you the music group. This is after their 4 years of training. When the size of the reward is 1 versus 2 small, like 50% of the time they wait for it and 50% they just want to have it immediately. When it's 1 versus 6, meaning the large reward, 100% of the time they wait for it. They're able to modify their behavior based on the size of the reward. Now this is the control group. They don't make any modification in their behavior. They haven't really developed this inhibition based on the future reward the way that the music children do. And if you think about it, you don't go to a music class, like none of you sign up for a music to learn how to do inhibition or impulse control, but this is really a byproduct that comes from discipline and engagement and participation and practice. The sports group kind of falls in the middle, so I want to emphasize that not all of it is music. Anything rewarding and engaging and motivating has these effects, but we see the strongest effect in the music group. We wanted to look at the underlying brain mechanisms of this inhibition. So we do this in an MRI with what we call a color word Stroop task. So the instruction is that you will name the color of the word. Try not to read the word as fast as you can. So let's just try it as if you're in an MRI scanner. I'm going to show you the word and just name the color of the word. Ready? So you can see it gets confusing. Sometimes the word and the color match, and that's incongruent, and sometimes they don't match. When you're doing this incongruent, you're engaging that same system of the brain, the inhibition network of the brain. You have to stop yourself from doing. And this allows us to look at this brain activity in the scanner. And when we did that with the children, I'm showing you the contrast between the music group and the control group, and we saw more engagement of these frontal circuits of the brain in the music group just after 2 years of music training. Again, showing that they have developed this skill better, but they're also the neuroplasticity of the brain has changed as a result. When we did this task, again after 4 years, we saw that differences between the music and control go away. Eventually, everybody gets there. It's not a very difficult task. The important is that children in the music group get there much faster, 2 years earlier. Imagine when you walk into middle school and you have better delayed gratification. You make a lot of better decisions in terms of who to hang out with, which classes to show up. So developing these skills are very important at an earlier age. And we looked at these both for working memory and inhibition because our data is over time, allows us to look at these. And really what we see is that the efficacy of music training, you want to kind of look at the slope of these lines, is the most strongest really before age 10. So there's a sensitive period of music training between ages 6 to 10 that we see the kind of like the most efficacious in terms of these far transfer effects of executive function. This really goes against our public policy education because we have music coming in high school and most of our elementary schools don't have music. We're trying to communicate this data that actually if we invest in music education at an elementary school level between age 6 to 10, we will have a lot of better results in terms of developing some of these functions. So our data was 75 students over time. This is still a pretty large study, but it doesn't represent the population. So one of the ways we try to answer these questions and see if this is relevant to everybody else is using these large data models. There is a study that is ongoing in the United States called ABCD, Adolescence, Brain, and Cognitive Development. This is an NIH-funded study. 10,000 kids are being followed at 10 sites for 10 years. There is a music measure there that allows us to have an understanding of how these kids develop in terms of their music training and their cognitive skills. It's a self-reported measure, so it's not an experimental one, but we can have an understanding of their engagement with music, whether it's private, whether it's at their school, how often they practice. This has been shown, this is data from a group, Raina Gordon at Vanderbilt, that at the beginning of the study, when they compared the children who had music training versus the ones who didn't have, across the board, all of the executive function and language development measures, children with music training did better, significantly. What we have done is that we followed these children over time, and this trend tends to continue. The yellow is the musicians. They are doing better. This is a language development task compared to their control counterparts. The more interesting part is that when we introduce socioeconomic status, because this data set is very big, we can kind of control for some of these variables. On the left are children from communities with low area deprivation index. These are high socioeconomic status children. It doesn't seem to make a huge difference whether you have music or not. Because the control kids probably have a lot of other enrichment programs, families and homes that probably reading a lot, more stimulated, and are doing well. What comes in that is interesting is the children who are from higher area deprivation index. These are children from under-resourced communities, and you can see that the music makes a huge difference, that the slopes are no longer parallel, that the music is compensating for everything else that they don't have. Again, not aligned with our public policy because a lot of private schools have music programs, and children who really actually need it to develop some of these language and cognitive skills don't seem to be able to benefit from it. So I want to touch on two studies that we are ongoing at my lab. This is a study, because our longitudinal study was not a randomized control trial, and that's really gold standard of research because our effects could have been related to motivation of the parents. After all, they have signed up for music, and then we recruited them after. With the help of the NIH, we started doing a randomized control trial. This is an ongoing study. We are studying 2 cohorts. So we recruited about 115 6-year-olds in Los Angeles. We tested them, and then we randomly assigned half of them to music and the other half to a theater program. We had to make sure the theater program does not have music, which the theater people laughed at me when I first said that. And I said, no, this is like, we have to really control for it. So no background music, no singing, just drama. They're really wonderful partners. The music program is provided by Colburn School of Music. I'm very surprised from even feasibility metrics of this study. I did not think that if you assign a 6-year-old without their own kind of volunteer decision to a music program, they would stick with it. After 2 years, we had, out of the first cohort, 20 kids who were assigned to music, 19 of them were still in the music program. And these are children, there's a mother who uses her time off every week to take her child to music. There is somebody who takes 3 buses, and in LA, 3 buses is like a long distance. But again, when you provide high quality music education to people and to children, they really stick with it and they like it. So we are at just end of year 2. We're gonna be analyzing this data this coming summer, and this is really the only randomized control trial long-term in the United States that would allow us to look at some of these in kind of underlying motivation and predisposition and put that aside and really look at impact of music training. And then finally, we're doing a study with the LA Opera, combining music and theater, because we are really interested in singing, but also it's an activity that allows for perspective taking and compassion and being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and empathy. So we started this project 2 years ago. These children sing with the LA Children's Chorus, but we have these wonderful teaching artists from the LA Opera who go and teach them about the opera, teach them how does it take to put a story and add music to it and sing it. So they come up with their own stories and then they kind of compose these opera around it. They learn about different aspects of opera, but we also have them go, as part of the requirement in the study, they have to go to the opera 5 times. And for us is that if you welcome a child into a performing arts center as a child, it probably changes their perspective that they are welcome there, they're part of this. They get to see the costumes. It's really fun. I really wish I could be in this study because they're having a wonderful time. Just a short video of what one of their classes. So they've seen this opera at the LA Opera, and then they practice some of these pieces with their group. And this year, the first cohort was about 20 kids. This year, when we went to recruit, everybody wanted to participate. So we have about 50 participants in this study. They're between age 8 to 11. So I want to leave with some thoughts that our experience from both longitudinal and cross-sectional work shows that music training is important and necessary for development of some of these cognitive, executive function, and language skills. We see more effects in auditory domain than, for example, visual domain, and this relationship is strongest before age 10. We think that having that skills developed before age 10 gives some protection mechanisms, maybe against dyslexia, ADHD, but also puts you at an advantage in how you perform in everyday life and school when you have developed these skills. And then it also could be that our tests are not really sensitive enough. If you can introduce more complex tests, they continue to do better. And then we are hoping that our current randomized control trial and these large data models, if they continue to be supported, would answer some of these questions more clearly. And with that, I'd like to acknowledge my lab. My students do all the great work. I just get to come and talk about it. Collaborators and continuous funding partners that allow for this work. And thank you.
We have time for 2 questions.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the use of music training for kids who maybe have ADHD or executive functioning challenges, and if the benefits may be applicable for kids who are a little older than 10 if they're delayed in that area.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We ran a small pilot looking at ADHD and kind of developing some of these inhibition skills. And from our pilot data, we have strong evidence that you can still teach through music training. It's a lot, thinking about it is a way of teaching some of these skills in a very fun way. It's like there's no music class that is not fun, especially if it's done in a group and you're singing and you're moving together. So I do think that introducing, and there's a lot of other work across, say the Vanderbilt is the one group that has done a lot of work with autism and executive function training through music. And what I said about sensitive period, is not that music is only effective before age 10. And thanks for that clarification. Older adults learning music, we have data in our lab that shows with like better speech and noise perception. So brain is like plastic throughout the life. But I think our data shows that if we want to teach these skills before age 10 is really the best time to do it. But now you can continue introducing these skills. One more.
How are you defining music training?
That's a very good question. So these children in our group, as I said, they were trained with this El Sistema-based music training. Is Western classical music. They all played the violin. They all string instruments. We had to have a conversation with Yola early on that because the community was primarily Hispanic and immigrant families, it's important to introduce that music to their life, like to their curriculum. Because if they're learning a Western classical piece and then they go home and nobody knows any of that, the grandparents won't participate, the parents won't participate. So I think any type of music, as Tom said, is personal. It has to kind of like resonate with the person. In terms of like what qualifies training, I think systematic training, our data is learning how to sing and learning how to play an instrument. So listening, not listening alone, but kind of learning that kind of multitasking of auditory motor coordination that will have very similar results. Okay, I think my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Habibi.
Hi, thanks for coming. So in today's talk, there's a number of things that I want to address. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to back up a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the general similarities between language and music. We're having a conference about music here at a museum entirely devoted to the word. So I'm going to look at some of the connections between language and music and why those exist. Then I'm going to go in and talk about some connections specifically within early childhood. I'm going to talk about some of the issues that Dr. Habibi addressed already about why music training might affect language skills in the first place. And then finally, I'm going to tell you about some of my research where we've looked at connections between music and language in very young children. As a little bit of a lark here, I've decided to, on each slide, post a famous book, since we're at a museum to the written word here, that touches at least tangentially on the topic of each slide. So, music and language, the question immediately arises, are they similar? And when you bring this up to some people, they will say, of course they're similar. These are universal human behaviors. They're both sound-based communications. Whereas you bring it up in other contexts and people will say, of course they're different. Music requires specialized training, whereas everybody can use language. Music is about performances and recordings. So I'm going to address the ways in which music is similar and sometimes is not similar to language. And music and language can overlap in several different ways. They can overlap in terms of their goals, what they're trying to achieve. Music and language can overlap in terms of their form, the way in which they try and achieve it, and then the specific elements that create music and sound can also overlap. So let's first turn to some of the goals. Music and language will have many goals in common. Both are about communicating, and in music specifically, what we are trying to communicate, what we are trying to get across is emotion. Music and language also have the shared goal of fostering interpersonal relationships. They both can create that connection between people. And then, of course, people can also use music and language for the goal of demonstrating proficiency. High-end music performances are not all that dissimilar to performances of poetry or a literary magnum opus. So they can have similar goals. Likewise, music and language can also share similarities across diverse forms. Both are primarily oral, that is through sound, but music and language will also have a written component. Both will have a very strong vocal component. In fact, singing is probably the most universal form of music other than percussion. But music will also have non-vocal components, just like language can also be expressed non-vocally through, say, sign language. And then finally, both of them have a system of rules which clarify what makes a well-formed piece of music or a well-formed piece of language. The elements of music can also be the same. as the elements of language. As it turns out, both music and language share many common elements. Rhythm is in fact present, we all know how it's present in music, but it is an important part of language and speech. Pitch as well. And then finally, timbre, by which I mean the difference in the sounds, what makes, say, a trombone different from an oboe, different from a voice. So let's explore a little bit of these in a little bit more depth here. Rhythm can be thought of as a series of strong and weak beats. And the ways that these strong and weak beats come together in a piece of music can be shared with language as well. English, the language that we are communicating in right now, is a stress-timed language. And that means that in English, we roughly try to put the stresses of our words in a set rhythm. You can look at the case of limericks. Limericks are actually a very good example of this type of the poetry of music. So in here, this is there was a young woman named Bright, whose speed was much faster than light. She set out one day in a relative way and returned the previous night. You can hear the connection between language and music and the way that they're both using the rhythm. Not all languages, however, are stress-timed like English. French, for example, is syllable-timed. So if I want to say, in English, I might say, Jim went to the store with Sally. And you can hear the stresses on Jim, store, and Sally. But in French, we might say, Jacques est allé au magasin avec Charlène. And there, we're not stressing a series of strong beats throughout there, where in fact, it is a syllable-timed language, where each syllable is occupying a roughly similar amount of time. This is why even when a French speaker speaks English, sometimes the way that they're stressing the words can sound a little odd or different, because even if they've learned the sounds of the language, they might not have that stress timing that we do for a native English speaker. And in fact, there is evidence that this can even influence the music that composers write. There have been some studies looking at music of the 19th century, which was thought to be a very nationalistic time in Europe in particular, looking at the rhythms of the music of French composers versus English composers, Germans, Italians, Spanish composers. They found that the melodies that each composer is writing were actually influenced in their timing by the sounds of their native language. And this is true whether or not they were writing for music with lyrics or music that didn't have lyrics attached to it. The sounds of their language is influencing the music that's going on and being created in their minds. Even within individual words in English, the rhythm can make a big difference. If I say the word object, that's a very different word than if I say the word object. The stress is creating the meaning of the word itself. So these are just a couple of examples of how this rhythmic structure can influence our language. Now, pitch is another component of music, which is obviously very important in music. It is, in fact, a very important component of language as well. In many languages across the whole world, pitch is actually a distinctive feature. So I gave you the difference between object and object, which differ in rhythm. You can have words which differ only in pitch, which can be different words as well. So this can happen in languages like Mandarin Chinese, Thai. There are Bantu dialects that use this as a rhythmic feature. Navajo uses this. And I'll play an example. This is from Mandarin. This is a very classic example of the 4 mas.
Ma, 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 ma.
These are all 4 different words that differ only in their pitch. Pitch is what's creating the meaning of these different words. Now, English does not have this type of differentiation between words just according to pitch, but we do have this type of pitch and rhythm affecting the meaning of entire phrases. And this happens through what's called prosody. Prosody can be thought of as the music of speech. And this is about capturing about those nuances in music that are not quite captured in just the writing of itself. So the difference between a statement versus a question. He went to the store. He went to the store. This is a difference in meaning that's captured by the difference in intonation and pitch. You can have happy versus sad can also be captured by these differences. You know, a Toronto fan, I put this about the Maple Leafs, but I think the Blue Jays is a bit more relevant. A Toronto fan might say, you know, the Blue Jays lost tonight, whereas somebody from the evil city of LA might say, the Blue Jays lost tonight. It's a difference in meaning just according to the pitch. You can even give a difference in emphasis. If I say, give Daphne the grapes, that has a different meaning than if I say, give Daphne the grapes. They convey different things, even though they would be written the same way. And so we can perceive this type of prosody quite distinctly. Languages all have their own distinct sounds. I was sharing a little bit about the difference between English and French earlier. In Japanese, it's neither stress-timed nor syllable-timed. It's actually what's called mora time. These are subsyllable units, and they use both pitch and rhythm as an accent. And as it turns out, we can perceive the difference between languages just through hearing these rhythmic changes. I'm going to play you an example, and what this is a speaker of Japanese and then English saying a phrase, but we've removed all of the information about what the words are. Every syllable has been replaced by the syllable sa, but we keep the timing and pitch the same as the original. One of these is Japanese and one of these is English. Can you hear the difference between which one is Japanese and which one is English? If I play the originals.
こちらの方は形成外科の専門家です。
This supermarket had to close due to economic problems.
You can hear those differences arise just through the sounds of that speech. So what we're hearing is a very musical component to language, not when it's just in the context of music, but even as it's spoken in day-to-day life. And as it turns out, this type of information is actually a child's first contact with both language and music. So as it turns out, hearing is the first sense to really fully develop. We're able to hear in utero around 30 weeks. And because of the situation of a child being in a uterus, it gives the sounds what's called a low pass filter. Not everything about the sound gets through. It gets a kind of a muffled sound. But the types of information that can pass through is these things like the pitch and the rhythm of that sound. That's the information that a child is getting about their language and their music in utero. So things like the rhythm of the mother's heartbeat is actually a very prominent sound for children, for babies in utero. Their mother's voice is transmitted pretty well, and you can even pick up on ambient music around. This is a recording I'm going to play for you of what it actually sounds like. This is a microphone in a woman's uterus. But first is you're going to be hearing a heartbeat here. So the child is being exposed to that type of rhythmic musical information from a very, very young age. Here's another sample, also recorded in utero. You're hearing ambient music in the background. So all of this is to show that infants in utero are picking up a lot of information about the sounds that exist in their world. And that's all well and good. Does it carry over? Does it happen? Does anything come from it? Well, newborns do show evidence that they've learned about the sounds that they've heard before they were born, that carries over until after they were born. There's a lot of evidence that show that newborns, even at a couple of hours old, will prefer the sound of their mother's voice to that of other women's. Not their fathers, unfortunately. But the mother's is coming through quite clearly. They also show preference for familiar stories or music that they've heard repeatedly before they were born. There's actually a really cool study where regular listeners of an Australian soap opera called Neighbours, the theme song to that is recognized by children after they're born. So even after they're born, there's a lot of evidence for this interconnection between music and language. And one of the primary ways this happens is through what's called infant-directed speech. It's sometimes called motherese, but it's this way of speaking to babies. You all know what it sounds like. But it's a very song-like speech with generally higher pitch, more dynamic changes, so louder louds, softer softs, more pitch changes, that is higher highs and lower lows, with longer pauses and shorter utterances. And this is something that people use to talk to babies fairly consistently. I'll play an example here.
Oh, where's my happy girl? There she is. Where's my happy girl?
So we can see that there's really a musical quality to the speech there. And this is thought to not only be preferential to the infants, but also to help scaffold their learning of the language, to make it easier for them to pick up on the language through the music of speech. So let's see. I am going to, like any good academic, I've tried to put in far too much in here than what I can get away with. So I'm going to skip over a little bit about the ways that music expresses emotions here, and I am going to talk about the advantage that musicians have in linguistic understanding. So one way that this happens is through something called speech and noise. You all know what speech and noise is. It's exactly what it says on the tin. Picking out a single thing of speech in a crowded room can be a very difficult thing. And as it turns out, that musicians actually retain this ability better as they age. Everybody complains about getting worse at this as they age. This is a very common phenomenon. But if you look at musicians versus non-musicians, it turns out that the ear of a musician is of a 70-year-old musician is actually approximately equal to the ear of a 50-year-old non-musician. They retain this ability considerably better. Another way that musicians outperform non-musicians in speech-related tasks is through phonemic processing. This is the ability to isolate and manipulate the sounds of speech. So if I ask you to say, let's just try this all. Say the word planes. Planes. Now say planes without saying n. You get the word plays, exactly. Now say the word fixed. Now say fixed without saying k. Fist. Exactly. So this is the ability to manipulate those sounds of speech. In some research that we did in our lab comparing musicians to instrumentalists and singers to non-musicians, we found that both instrumentalists and singers could actually do these types of phonetic-related tasks better than non-musicians. They're able to understand and process those sounds of speech. You can even find these differences in second language ability as well. This is from the same study where we looked at musicians and non-musicians, and we found that in terms of both identifying and then creating the sounds of foreign accented speech, musicians outperformed non-musicians. You'd expect singers to be able to do this. This is part of what singers need to do for their craft. You wouldn't necessarily expect trombonists to be able to do this better. Turns out they can, and this is because of those oral advantages that they're getting. So these oral advantages, one great hypothesis about the reason that these might come around is what's called the opera hypothesis. And at its basic, this is, the hypothesis is claiming that music and sound overlap in many of these types of elements, like I've shared before. However, music processing, both performing and listening, requires a greater deal of precision in things like timing and pitch accuracy than speech processing does. So musicians train these abilities more, and then this carries over into their ability to work with language. And we can actually see evidence of this in their neural processing. This is work from Nina Krause's lab looking at brain waves that are happening approximately 10 milliseconds after a sound is heard. There's a part of the brainstem where you can see activity that basically mimics the sound. This is the encoding of the sound itself. And as it turns out, those brain waves look an awful lot like the sound they just got played. In musicians, they match very precisely. In non-musicians, they still match, but not quite as well. So this is showing neural evidence that they're encoding those sounds more faithfully. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about is what we're doing with this. I work at the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto, and part of what I've been working on over the past 10 years is developing an early childhood music education program called Smart Start. These are group music classes for children between the ages of 0 and 6, and they are developed in-house with us in collaboration between both myself, neuroscientists, and trained music educators. And these have the twin goals of both helping children to learn music and to be ready to start on a musical path, but also every activity is designed to help develop cognitive and linguistic skills through that activity. And we can do that because of the ways that I've showed you here, because of that tight enmeshment between music and language. We're not just tacking it on as an extra worksheet. We are in fact building them in the same part of the same program. So what we find, we actually have an in-house research lab. We take children who start in the program in the beginning, we bring them in the beginning, and then we measure different cognitive and linguistic and musical abilities, and then we bring them on at the end to measure those same abilities. And we find that children in our program show significant improvements in things like vocabulary size, in letter and number naming ability. And of course, you expect children to get better at all of these things as they age. Children get better at everything as they age. These are improvements that go above and beyond what you'd expect from normal benchmark development. I'm running out of time here, so I'll show you that we've actually expanded the study to track the same children over 4 years, and it turns out we keep seeing more and more improvements as we continue along with there. They're also getting better in their musical abilities as we continue through there. So this is not just getting better at language or those types of tasks, but seeing getting better at music. I'm running way short of time, so I will skip to my takeaways spot and just say that we see that speech and music are similar in many different ways, including rhythm, prosody, and the neural processing. Music is communicating that emotion, and training in music can benefit language abilities. To reiterate what has been said before, this is especially important in early childhood. The earliest time, the earlier you can start in this, the better. We have white papers at the RCM website if you want to learn more about the connections between music and language, and I will stop there. Okay.
Thank you very much for that fascinating talk. In terms of the intellectual development of fetuses, you mentioned the mother listening to music. Have there been any studies of which types of music are the most favored? I had heard that Mozart was highly recommended.
Yeah, so that is a great question. And so I work at the Royal Conservatory of Music, where we are very dedicated to high-end classical music and amazing operatic performances. But as it turns out, the really important thing about gaining all of these benefits to music is not the specific type of music itself. What it is rather is the practice and the work that children are doing and putting into learning these musical skills. There is wonderful music from cultures around the world and both cultures within the United States and Canada and cultures from other countries as well. All of that is great to help to develop these skills. It's the act of training to learn about and to develop those skills that helps, and not the specific type of music itself. I see one.
Have you studied the impact of multiple languages being spoken in a home for early impact on children?
So me personally, no. However, I used to work in Montreal, and one of the best things about Montreal is that it is a almost completely bilingual city. I tried to learn French while I was there, and the constant turns out everybody is better in English than I am at French. It's a terrible place to try and learn French to start, because everybody just switches on you. As it turns out, though, it also makes it a great place to study the effects of raising bilingual children, because there's bilinguals everywhere. The takeaway point is that learning a second language is actually very good for many different types of cognitive development. We find great effects on executive function, on perceptual abilities. Those are real, and they happen in addition to the main effect of you getting to speak and understand another language, which is, not a pile of beans itself. So the one problem that people sometimes raise about learning a second language is the rate at which you learn any individual language can sometimes be a little bit slower when you are learning two languages. However, children who are learning a second language will inevitably catch up in both languages and develop full proficiency if they're in that context. And you get there's no real downside to learning that second language. So it's a very good thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hutchins. Please welcome Assistant Professor at Morgan State University's School of Community Health and Policy and Chair of the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission and founder and CEO of Discover Me, Recover Me, Dr. David Faulconley.
Now, I'm going to presume that some of y'all wanted to follow along with that, but I understand if you ain't get it. So let's slow it down a little bit. Now, how many of you would say you are not rhythmically inclined? Show of hands. Stop lying to yourself. How long we do that for? Maybe about 30 seconds, a minute. And you see how connected we were? Right? You didn't need a drum in order to do that? Right? All right. It's one of the ways by which we can reaffirm humanity. Music is storytelling because everything is storytelling. I think of a story of a young man who heard stories in his village about a certain drum, a certain djembe, that was the source of happiness. And he grew up with many of those narratives, and he was juxtaposing that with everything that he was experiencing in his village. Anger, sadness, depression, despair, confusion. And he got so fed up with everything that he was feeling that he was gonna find that village with that special djembe and steal it to bring it back to his village, because he was truly convinced that it was the source of happiness. But when he got to that village, he was met by an elder, and the elder sat him down and they just connected. And the elder told the young man his story about how he too came to that particular village to steal their drum because he too thought it was the source of happiness. But when that elder came into that village, he was met with so much kindness, he experienced so much joy, so much connection that he never left. He realized that the drum was just a drum, just like any other djembe, but that the people were the source of happiness. These are the people who are the source of my happiness. Why should you believe me? Right? Who am I? All I can give you is the people that I represent. My wife, my children, my parents, my in-laws. They're the reason I do this. They are what makes life worth it. I think now more than ever we need those reminders about what makes life worth it. Well, you're looking at them for me. It's interesting and an honor and appreciation, Renee, for putting me on the list. We're in a museum. I'm the product of a museum. If anybody wants to go about an hour north to Baltimore, I encourage you to go to the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum, which was founded by the late Dr. Elmer Martin and Dr. Joanne Martin, my godparents. And so I grew up in this museum my entire life. Even before I was a gleam in my parents' eyes, I was being molded by that museum. And it wasn't just a source of history for me, it was a source of arts and culture, a connection to those genuine expressions of who I am. And in having that connection with the museum, I met this woman, Mary Carter Smith, a world-renowned griot, storyteller of the African oral tradition. And at 9 years old, I had the absolute gall to tell a story that I heard on her radio show in her presence. And her simple act of acknowledgement changed my life. Because from that acknowledgement, I got to learn storytelling. You see the back of her beautiful home. I had to stay in that home while my mom was coming to pick me up after being on a radio show with Mama Mary. And in that space, I was absorbing. So we talk about children absorbing, right? I think about my kids who I'm very jealous of because they know English and Spanish. They just absorbed it. I too absorbed so much of culture, so much of wisdom and understanding and storytelling, just being in the space of Mary Carter Smith. And because of them and so many others, I am talking to you right now. So how dare I proceed any further without giving them the honor and the respect and the appreciation they deserve? And the best way to do that is if you remember anything from me, remember them too. So we talk about the power of words, how apropos. I love what this man said. Ralph Bunche, first black person to receive a Nobel Prize. He said, if you want to get across an idea, wrap it up in a person. I like what he said. Also like what this man said, Fred Hampton, leader of the Black Panthers in Chicago. He said, I'm not going to die on no airplane. I'm not going to die slipping on no ice. I'm going to die for the people because I'm going to live for the people. I'm going to live for the people because I love the people. I like to think that my colleagues who have had the opportunity to share their stories are doing this because fundamentally, you all love the people. Keep that as your North Star. So I'm a public health guy. And what I love about public health is something that I didn't learn until after I got the PhD. Go figure. You can find many definitions of public health. Like, go on your phones whenever you get a chance, just look up public health definition. You'll see a lot of them. Let me just spare you and give you the real definition. Anything, as long as it's related to the acknowledgement, the appreciation, the understanding, the advancement, the uplifting, the strengthening, the support of human health and well-being, it is public health. So we have heard about it being done as research. We have heard about it being done as practice. We are hearing about it as advocacy. We're hearing about it as education, communication, coalition building, power reallocation. It's all of that. Because as long as you're doing that part, welcome to public health. And I love it because I was able to find myself in this space, again, after I got the PhD. Because how and why do arts and culture relate to health? We've gotten many responses and many answers, much insight from my colleagues. I like to go with the short answer. Of course they do. So if I start to play a little something here, you know. How you feeling? How did that make you feel? Okay. So the simple fact that you all said it made you feel good, it made you feel lively, I saw some heads bobbing, that's health. Did you need to submit any data to me other than, let me finish, did you need to submit any other data than your acknowledgement? Sometimes it can be that easy. And I always encourage all of us in this field to be reminded of that fundamental data that we know all of the participants that we serve have, their stories. So arts and culture are inherent to the human existence. It is what we do, it is who we are. So yes, I am proudly a researcher, I am proudly a scientist, but I'm even more proudly a practitioner. Because from the time I was a child, especially to now, I've known it works. The beautiful thing about doing this research is you already know the answer. We're just trying to prove it through the empirical space. I love that about what I do. I love the fact that many cultures, including the cultures that I represent, do not separate the ideas of arts, culture, and health. They are one and same as a concept. So griots, jalis that come out of West Africa, yes, many people know them as storytellers, but they are keepers of the culture. They are the preservers of history. Can we all agree that preserving history is good for your health? Can we all agree that understanding your cultural foundations and your heritage is good for your health? There you go. So for me, the scientific focus is understanding how it works through the empirical lens. There is a value to that. But my practical focus is using it as much as I can, however I can, because we know it works. The epic of public health that we are currently in is the cultural epic of health. We have moved past social determinants and social drivers. So yes, we all have our labels. We have all the things that define us. But what does that mean? We are in the age of meaning and understanding and how that meaning relates to health and well-being. So much gratitude to the University of Florida Center for Arts and Medicine and leading so much of the way around understanding the mechanisms by which creative expression leads to a myriad of health outcomes. So raise your hand if you're creative. Good, 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 good. I got another question for y'all later on, so keep that same energy. When you engage in that creative energy, how do you feel? What are you doing? And I want you to look at it through this lens here. So self-efficacy, that means you're doing it. So the fact that you're just doing it, I didn't ask if you did it well. I just asked if you did it. That has a connection to health. If it is allowing you to be in touch with that which makes you who you are, that's good for your health. If you like pretty things, as you can tell, I like pretty things, okay? That's good for your health. The fact that we are laughing, the fact that we are expressing emotions, that we are connected despite whatever our backgrounds and circumstances may be, that is good for your health. The fact that you all are laughing and expressing yourselves is also good for your health. The fact that you're trying to make meaning of how all these creative practices, these creative energies relate to health outcomes, that's good for your health. When you feel like you can be the best version of yourself because of creativity, that's definitely good for your health. It's part of who we are. It's what we do. The main difference now is we are, again, building the science, building the empirical understanding of this magic that has always been around us. So now I'm going to make the case for storytelling. So yes, in drumming, we tell plenty of stories. There are many rhythms and traditional accompaniments that we do on the djembe. So how many of you have seen a djembe before right now? How many have heard a djembe before right now? Okay, so we're not just making stuff up, right? Yeah, we're not just doing that. There is a tradition behind this art. So if I play, ooh, what's on my mind right now? That's kuku. That's a fisherman's dance out of Senegal in West Africa. So many traditional African rhythms are accompanied by, what do you think? Dance. Drumming and dancing are two sides of the same coin. Oftentimes, you may see drumming by itself, but you never see African dance without drumming. They are one and the same. But it's all telling a story. So yes, the story is being told by movement, the story is being told by rhythm, and the fact is that storytelling as a philosophy is universal. We all do it. Here's my question that I was telling you about. How many of you are storytellers? Show of hands. Oh, really? Okay. So who's convinced they're not a storyteller? Be brave, be bold. Okay. So to the people who think they're not a storyteller, I got a 2-question quiz for you. People who don't think they're storytellers, are you a human being? I see thumbs up, right on. Okay, people who think they're not a storyteller, do you communicate with other human beings? Okay, I saw another thumbs up. Thank you, sir. You're all storytellers. The beauty of storytelling is that we already do it. You don't have to go to more school for storytelling. The difference is I want you all to be intentional storytellers because it is universal, right? We can change the language, we can change the methodology, but fundamentally, if you are conveying a narrative, welcome to the world. We all do it. When we use our voice, whether it is our literal voice or our metaphorical voice, and we had some beautiful examples of that this morning, there's power behind the voice. Let's start with the one at the beginning. Y'all felt that, right? All the different videos that were shared, right? The joy of when words came out, no matter what those words. Was that not powerful? Because they were reflecting their context. And context is everything in public health. Just as important as storytelling is, so is story listening. Again, two sides of the same coin because listening is acknowledgement. So I don't just mean hearing it, which we can do if we're physically inclined, but paying attention to what was said. Perfect segue, thank you, right? The intentionality of what we are taking, the speech that comes from all the noise, right? When you get both of those, storytelling and story listening, you're getting a mutually beneficial exchange, and that's the part that I really want to elevate. We can feel a lot right now is off balance, right? That one side's benefiting, the other side is hurting. Let me introduce you to something that can be helpful for everyone. If it's genuine, that's my only qualifier. Genuine storytelling and genuine story listening is a mutually beneficial exchange. All right, now here's the sciencey part, okay? And we got introduced to a lot of this already. So the fact that it's showing up in storytelling, just like it's showing up in music, is pretty much the point, right? So hopefully, and now I know drums can be a little loud, especially now if it's only one. Imagine if it's like 3, 4, 5 of me up here drumming at the same time. Yeah, we'd be blowing a lot of minds right now. But when you are in the presence of music and in the presence of storytelling, yes, you should feel a little bit more relaxed, right? You should be conditioned to the feelings that are being generated and cultivated because of the dopamine that's hitting your system in the moment of storytelling. The one that I love the most, oxytocin, love, right? So storytelling can create and produce love. Music can do the same thing. Don't you think we could use a little bit more of that right now? Exactly. Let's keep going. All right. What's happening to us as a collective? Well, we can be on one accord when we are in the presence of storytelling. And what I love so much as a researcher and as a scientist, and I encourage all of my colleagues in the academy to just indulge me on this one, take all the brilliance of the science that you do, right? Add some storytelling to it. Because that practice of introducing storytelling of any form, right, can enhance how much people internalize the brilliance that you're delivering versus just the facts alone. It's just augmenting, it's enhancing, right? And that's what arts and culture can do. It augments, it enhances, it amplifies. So I want y'all to walk away from this, wherever you may go after we depart, knowing what goes into a story, okay? And the same principles show up in our music. So African drumming, for example, usually we start at the beginning which is called a break, right? That's the indicator. We start, we stop, we finish. I mean, we start, we stop, we change. Much like the beginning, middle, end of a story. Now, how we get from the beginning to the middle and the end is the rhythms that we play. So we use the plot to navigate from those critical points of beginning, middle, end. But then we can also play with these other elements as well. Things like the title, the characters, the sceneries, the challenges, and the resolutions. And yes, give me your favorite song. I guarantee you it has those elements in it. I'm thinking of one of my favorite songs right now, Voodoo Child, Slight Return by Jimi Hendrix, right? Even the title is a story. Voodoo Child, explains a lot about me, right? The 3 R's of storytelling, and I'm sure these same R's exist in music and any form of creative expression. Reason, responsibility, and respect. What do I mean by that? It has to make sense. That's reason. Your story has to be something that people can follow. It doesn't mean they have to get every single intricacy, but can they follow the general premise, right? The general theme, the idea of the story. There's a responsibility to the stories that we tell, right? The crafting of the story, the delivery of the story, the responsibility to making sure we're giving our audience the best chance to receive the message that they are meant to receive from the story. And then respect. That's just a virtue. Just be respectful, okay? You give respect, you get respect. That's what my mom taught me. 5 tools of storytelling, and you notice how, number 1, voice. That's honoring my mom too, right? The way she tells her stories, she sings them, okay? We can use our bodies to tell stories. We definitely using our minds, right? This is a thinking person's game when you are a storyteller, when you're an artist, and sometimes you are doing things in real time. I'm literally thinking about the words that I'm telling you right now, like seconds before I'm telling it to you. Sometimes I don't even know what's coming out of my mouth as I'm saying it. Beautiful, right? Because it's also tapping into imagination. No matter how seasoned you are, your imagination never goes away. You got to keep using it, though. And ultimately, what storytelling allows us to do, and music is such a brilliant methodology through the philosophy of storytelling for this, connection. That's the name of the game. So there are 2 major parts of storytelling. Story, telling. Right? But the questions that we ask in both components of storytelling are critical. But they're the questions that we've always asked since time immemorial. Who, what, where, when, how, and what I think is the most important question, why? Who's in the story? What's the story about? Where does the story exist? When does the story happen? How does the story progress? Why does the story exist? We could say the same thing about any musical piece that's ever been created. Why did Jimi Hendrix create Voodoo Child? Just for me. Who's telling the story? What story are they telling? Where are they telling the story? When are they telling the story? How are they telling the story? Why are they telling the story? Now, for my researchers out there, let me save you a lot of headache. I didn't learn this again after I got the PhD. Who, what, where, when can be best answered with quantitative data. How, why, qualitative data. Let me just put it this way. The only way that a human can explain this thing called life is through their stories. Qualitative data. Now, the whole point is that we use both to tell as full a story as we can, so that people can understand, again, all the elements of why creative energy is so elemental to health and well-being. Now, if you want to think about what can go into your story, then you can take those questions and break them down even more. Even if you don't think you are a seasoned storyteller, as long as you know your core point, your narrative, you're good. I'm going to give you all an exercise. Do this on your own free time. We're on Saturday, right? Think about how you would capture the essence of who you are, your story, in 5 to 7 words. Yeah. To my musicians, could you do it in 5 to 7 notes? If you're rhythmically inclined, could you do it in 5 to 7 beats? Let me see. That explains me in a nutshell. These are all elements that we can play around with. And I know that to my writers, to my creators, this is what we do all the time. We can move around the characters, the structure. We can definitely make sure that we're setting a certain tone. We want people to feel a certain way. We can convey struggle, but we always want to make sure, within reason, there's a happy ending, right? That there's a solution to the challenges that are being presented. And no matter the format, no matter how you distribute it, certainly being mindful of the audience, what do you want them to discover? What is the revelation, being a little biblical, right, that they are getting from the stories that are being told? Even if no words are being spoken, I can tell you, and perhaps we've all done this, we've had that one song that speaks to you beyond words. We have that song? You thinking about that song right now? I am. I'll try not to cry. Okay, right? Because and that's the beauty. That's one of the ways that I've known how beautiful the language of music is. It can transcend language, right? In so many ways, the ways that we may think about the written word or the spoken word, it hits all the right notes, literally, figuratively, emotionally, existentially. So be mindful of what works for you. That's the beauty of storytelling. There is no one way to do it. There are an infinite number of ways by which you can tell your story. But you hopefully create a moment where people can share it. So even if you're singing some of the rhythm, even if you don't remember all that, just remember this. Right? And that's something you can easily pass along, and you might not even know it. So I continue to be amazed and honored by what storytelling and arts and culture do for health and well-being. And as much as, yes, I focus on researching it and making sure that it's entered into the literature because that has its value, I also want to make sure more people just have the opportunity for it. And so in a moment of despair, right, the transition from one relationship, another one was created, it brought me back to the museum in a very explicit way. And so now we're working on a division of the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum called TEACH, Transforming Equity Through Arts, Culture, and Health. Wow, right? Yeah, no, yeah. Real talk, it came to me in a car, right? It came to me in a car. I think I was going to the dermatologist, right? And it was overwhelming. And I'll tell you why it was overwhelming, because in that moment I thought of my godfather, a brilliant, brilliant man who he left this world when he was supposed to, but it was still too early for me. I wish I could talk to him now. Maybe I could even keep up somewhat intellectually. But he was an artist through and through. If you walk through the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, you're not only walking through the mind of Dr. Elmer Perry Martin, but you are seeing his creativity as well, visually. So to create a division that is dedicated to making accessible the power of storytelling and the power of creativity to, as has been mentioned, the people who perhaps need it the most. And I think about children who look like me. I think about the children of Baltimore, where I'm from. If one of them can be transformed by knowing how powerful their creativity is, it's absolutely worth it. And so that's what we want to make accessible. We want it to be grounded in the history of the African diaspora, and we want it to be grounded with the intentionality that, yes, whether you see it, whether you dance it, whether you sing it, whether you drum it, whether you tell it, whether you're just around it, it is good for your health. So I just learned about this maybe about a month ago, working with a colleague who's now at the University of Chicago, the hierarchy of economic offerings: commodities, goods, services, experiences, and transformations. And it gave me the brilliant idea to see, does storytelling fit within that hierarchy? And I said, yes, it does. The commodities are wisdoms, intelligences, experiences, and perspectives. That leads to the goods. Stories, narratives, recollections, histories. And I can tell you with every rhythm that I'm playing, whether it's traditional or something that I'm making up, I am definitely bringing you the history of African drumming. Services, the creation of story, storytelling, the preservation of those stories. The experiences, the reflections on past memories, the creation of new memories, i.e. connections, right? And then the transformation, holistic orientation, and the strengthening of health and life itself. That's what storytelling can offer us. And again, whether you tell your story, sing your story, dance your story, play your story, act your story, sculpt your story, write your story, paint your story, do it. Do it. And constantly be reminded of the ultimate database, you, right? We are made up of so much data, and it often comes in the form of, again, our memories, our recollections, our stories, our connections, and everything in between. Use that data along with all the other data that we can acquire to be reminded of these universal truths. In order for us to be our healthiest self, we have to be our most creative self. So when Ann and I talked many months ago, and I wasn't even sure if I was getting this gig, I talked about juxtaposition, right? And I didn't know that Planet Word existed, which I think is a shame. I'm glad I know it now, that it exists. And one of the things when I looked it up was its proximity. You might know what I'm talking about. 6 blocks away. Yeah. And it's a good reminder of the reality that we're navigating. Yeah, things are weird, things are confusing, things are upsetting, disconcerting. I can come up with a whole bunch of synonyms, right? That's the reality, and we cannot be naive to that. And we know that there are certain words, right, that are being attacked, right, that are being considered unsavory words, like equality, for example, right? Equality without reality doesn't really serve a purpose. So for me, take the word. It's okay. It's just a word. Equity, another one. Ooh, equity, right? The process by which we can get to some semblance of equality, but even that still has the remnants of reality. And our reality does lie within our history. Seeing some connections here, right? But the word that they haven't taken away, liberation. And you know what that tells me? Good, right? Because that's my goal. I want people to live lives of their own determination, where the only thing that drives them to whatever level of health, well-being, transformation is whatever they decide they want it to be. What a world that could be, right? But imagine that, right? Imagine all those people right? Living in a world of liberation, but it's possible. And we think about the stories that we reflect, the stories that have made us who we are. That's why it's important to not be afraid of the history. Yes, it can explain where we are, but it can also give us a roadmap to where we should go if we choose to take that path. So I'll leave you with this. Until the lion tells his side, her side, their side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Yeah. I'll give it to you another way. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So no matter what the language, no matter what the cultural context, the same truths seem to show up all the time. Take the hint. I'll give you another one. Paul Robeson, brilliant artist. Artists are the gatekeepers of truth. They are civilization's radical voice. So if you're not radical, get radical. To my artists, to my creatives, if you are radical, stay radical. You see what I'm saying? And I'm going to leave you with this one, and I think we can all jive with this. The existential determinants of health. Do we all want to be acknowledged? Do we all want to be appreciated? Do we all want to be respected? Do we all want to be understood? Do we all want to be loved? Can we agree that you can be acknowledged without denying somebody else? Can you be appreciated without devaluing somebody else? Can you be respected without criticizing someone else? Can you be understood without ignoring someone else? Can you be loved without hating someone else? Remind the people of those truths, all right? If you do nothing else with anything that I've said in this moment, please do that. And here's the beauty. Do it the way you know best. Do it your way, because that's exactly what's needed. Storytelling is how we got here. Storytelling is how we get out of this. Now, until they kick me off stage, we'll say, give me like a minute. Whoever is so inclined and so willing, just get up and move. However the rhythm speaks to you, whether the rhythm speaks to you, enjoy it, all right? Let's see. Let's see what I want to play. Okay, there we go.